Ambassador Hyunwoo walked into the Galactic Council chambers like he had done every day for the past 12 years. His black diplomatic suit was pressed and clean. His face showed no emotion. The other ambassadors barely looked up from their glowing screens when he entered. The morning session was about trade routes through the Corvin sector. The Zilrani representative was complaining about shipping delays. The Vorthak delegate wanted more military escorts for their cargo ships. Same arguments, different day. Hyunwoo waited for his turn to speak. When Council Leader Mordak finally called on Earth's representative, the chamber fell into its usual, half-interested quiet. Earth withdraws from all galactic affairs. Effective. Immediately, Hyunwoo said. His voice was calm and clear. This includes all treaties, trade agreements, and cooperative ventures. Thank you for your time. He placed a small data chip on the podium and walked out. The chamber stayed quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then the Zilrani ambassador laughed. Humans and their drama, she said. They'll be back next week asking for help with something. Mordak picked up the data chip and slid it into his reader without much interest. The message was simple and official. Earth was ending all relationships with every galactic government. No reasons given, no demands made. Just a polite goodbye. File it with the other diplomatic protests, Mordak told his assistant. They're probably upset about the mining rights vote last month. But Hyunwoo did not come back the next week, or the week after that. On Nexus Prime, the biggest trade station in the galaxy, Jaemin was closing down the human shipping office. He had worked there for 15 years, making sure goods moved between the stars on time. His team of 40 humans handled logistics for over 300 different worlds. Sir, what should we tell the Corvin delegation? Asked his assistant Minho. They're expecting the grain shipment schedules for next quarter. Tell them to figure it out themselves, Jaemin said, packing the last of his personal items. We're done. Minho looked confused. Done with what? The Corvin contract? Done with all of it. Jaemin sealed the box and picked it up. Turn off the computers, lock the doors, and catch the next ship home. 3 sectors away, Dr. So Young was packing medical supplies on Kepler Station. The Corvin plague had been contained for 6 months now, thanks to her team's work. 17 worlds had been saved from a disease that could have killed billions. The station commander, a tall, blue-skinned Altarian named Velkar, watched her team load their equipment onto human ships. Doctor, surely you cannot leave now. Velkar said. The treatment centers still need supervision. The vaccine production requires human oversight. So Young didn't look up from her packing. We trained your people, they know what to do. But what if the plague returns? Then you'll handle it. So Young sealed the last medical kit. You have the knowledge. You have the tools. You don't need us anymore. That was a lie, and both of them knew it. The Altarian doctors were good, but they didn't have the human gift for seeing patterns in chaos. They couldn't make the intuitive leaps that had saved those 17 worlds. But So Young was tired of being needed without being valued. On the massive space station called Central Hub, engineer Wu Jin was shutting down the hyperspace relay network's main control center. This was the system that made faster-than-light communication possible across the galaxy. Every message, every data transfer, every emergency call went through equipment that humans had built and maintained. You cannot simply leave, said Kixmara, the Zilrani trademaster. This system requires constant adjustment, the quantum fluctuations alone. The manuals are in the computer, Wu Jin replied, pulling circuits from the main console. Everything you need to know is documented. Kixmara's tentacles writhed with frustration. Manuals are not the same as experience. It took your people decades to learn how to stabilize the quantum matrix. Then you'd better start learning fast. Wu Jin disconnected the last human-made component. Or find another way to talk to each other. The pattern was the same across the galaxy. Human doctors left their hospitals. Human engineers abandoned their projects. Human teachers walked out of their classrooms. Human mediators stopped attending peace talks. Human researchers packed up their labs. They were polite about it. They finished their current patients before leaving the hospitals. They documented their work before shutting down the computers. They trained replacements when possible, but they left. On Earth, ships that had been scattered across 1,000 worlds were coming home. The great shipyards that had been quiet for months suddenly hummed with activity. Not building new ships, but preparing the ones they had for a very long journey. In the capital city of New Geneva, President Yoonji addressed the planet in a speech that was broadcast once and never repeated. "For 400 years we have served the galaxy with our minds and our hearts," she said. "We built their hospitals and fixed their machines. We solved their problems and prevented their wars. We asked for nothing but basic respect." She paused and looked directly into the camera. "We did not receive it. We were called adequate, useful, replaceable. Our ideas were dismissed until someone else claimed them. Our warnings were ignored until disasters proved us right. Our people were treated like servants in a house they helped build." Another pause. "We are not angry. We are simply finished. The galaxy belongs to you now. Make of it what you will." The broadcast ended. Earth went silent. Within 6 months, every human had left galactic space. They took their ships, their knowledge, and their technology. They left behind buildings they had constructed, machines they had maintained, and systems they had designed. But they took the one thing that had made it all work: themselves. The galaxy barely noticed at first. Other species picked up the duties that humans had abandoned. The work got done, though not as well or as quickly as before. But systems that humans had designed and maintained for centuries were complex things. They had been built not just with technology, but with human intuition, human problem-solving, and human care. Without humans to tend them, those systems began to fail in ways that no one expected. And the galaxy was about to learn the difference between doing a job and understanding it. 3 years had passed since the humans left. Counselor Kethamara of the Vorthak Empire stood in what used to be the central medical complex on Nexus Prime. The building looked the same from the outside, but inside, everything was falling apart. The lights flickered every few minutes. Half the medical scanners showed error messages that no one could fix. The automated surgery units had stopped working entirely after their monthly maintenance cycle failed. The Alterian doctors who had taken over from Dr. So Young's team looked tired and frustrated. "The diagnostic equipment is malfunctioning again," Dr. Yelmar told Kethmara. "We've tried everything in the manual, but nothing works." Kethmara examined the machine. It was clearly human-made, though the design was elegant enough that it had never looked alien. Now it just looked broken. "What did the humans do when this happened?" Kethmara asked. "According to the records, this never happened when they were here," Yelmar replied. "The systems ran perfectly for decades. That was the problem everywhere. Human-built systems hadn't just worked well, they had worked flawlessly. Now they were breaking down in ways that the instruction manuals never mentioned. On the outer rim of galactic space, the Corvin Plague had returned to 3 star systems. Without the human medical corps, the local governments were helpless. They had the vaccines that So Young's team had developed, but the disease had mutated in ways the computers couldn't predict. Governor Pelthor of the Kepler system sent desperate messages to every major world, begging for help. The responses were all the same: "We are dealing with our own medical emergencies." Every species was struggling with the same problems: equipment failures, system breakdowns, and mysteries that had never existed when humans were around to solve them. In the Central Hub's communication center, Kixmara stared at displays showing the hyperspace relay network. Red warning lights blinked across the entire galactic map. Message delays that used to be measured in seconds were now taking hours. Some routes had become completely unreliable. "The quantum matrix is destabilizing in sectors 7 through 12, reported her chief technician, a young Zilrani named Hexara. "We've tried recalibrating the relays, but we can't find the right frequency settings." Kixmara looked at the technical manuals that Wujin had left behind. They were detailed and complete, but they read like poetry written in a foreign language. The humans had made it look so easy. "What about the backup systems?" she asked. "They're failing too. The whole network was integrated in ways we didn't understand. When one part breaks, it affects everything else. Trade routes that had been reliable for centuries were becoming dangerous. Ships that should have taken 3 days to reach their destinations were arriving 2 weeks late, if they arrived at all. Some vessels had gotten lost entirely in hyperspace, their crews never to be seen again. The galactic economy, which had grown fat and comfortable on the foundation of human logistics, was starting to stumble. In the council chambers, emergency sessions were becoming routine. Every week brought new crises that required immediate attention. "The Alterian medical crisis is getting worse," announced Councillor Velthar. "They're asking for emergency aid to deal with the plague outbreak." "We have our own problems," replied the Zilrani representative. "Our shipping network is falling apart. Trade revenues are down 40% this quarter." Council leader Mordak looked around the room. Every delegate had similar stories: equipment failures, communication breakdowns, medical emergencies, and economic problems. The same issues were appearing everywhere. "Perhaps we should contact the humans," suggested Councillor Silvana, the eldest member of the council. "They might be willing to help with these technical problems." The room fell silent. The idea of asking humans for help was embarrassing. They had been so sure that other species could handle whatever humans had been doing. "We don't even know where they went," Mordak said finally. "They cleared out every outpost, every colony, every research station. It's like they vanished into deep space." That was true. Search parties had been sent to every known human location. All they found were empty buildings and dead computers. The humans had erased their digital traces and covered their tracks with professional thoroughness. On Vorthak Prime, War Chief Belgoth was dealing with his own crisis. The mighty Vorthak military, feared throughout the galaxy, was running out of power. Their weapon systems used energy cores that humans had designed and manufactured. Now those cores were failing, and no one knew how to fix them. "How long before we lose offensive capability?" Belgoth asked his chief engineer. 6 months, maybe less," came the reply. "The power output is dropping every week. We've tried reverse engineering the cores, but human technology is more complex than it appears." This was the most frustrating thing about human creations. They looked simple on the surface, but underneath was layer after layer of subtle engineering. Every component depended on every other component in ways that took decades to understand. The humans had made it look effortless because they had spent centuries learning how to make complex things seem simple. Back on Nexus Prime, Dr. Yelmar was reading through Dr. So Young's research notes for the 100th time. The human doctor had left behind detailed files about every disease she had treated, every cure she had developed, and every technique she had used. But reading about medicine was not the same as understanding it. So Young had possessed an intuitive grasp of biological systems that allowed her to see solutions that others missed. Her notes described what she had done, but they couldn't explain how she had known what to do. "Doctor, we have another patient with the new strain." His assistant called out. Mar looked at the medical scanner readings and felt the familiar frustration. The symptoms didn't match anything in the database. If So Young were here, she would have looked at these readings and immediately known what was wrong. She would have designed a treatment plan in minutes. Instead, Yelmar could only follow standard procedures and hope for the best. 3 years ago, the galaxy had been running like a perfectly tuned machine. Food moved efficiently between worlds. Communication was instant across any distance. Medical emergencies were handled quickly, and technical problems were solved before they became serious. Now, everything was breaking down at once, and no one could figure out why. The truth was simple but hard to accept. Humans had not just been participants in galactic civilization. They had been its maintenance crew, its problem solvers, its crisis managers, and its invisible foundation. Other species had specialized in their particular strengths. The Vorthak made excellent soldiers. The Zilrani were natural traders. The Alterians were skilled doctors. The Corvins were deep philosophers. But humans had been generalists. They were good at everything and excellent at figuring out how to make things work. More importantly, they cared about making things work properly, even when no one was watching. Without them, the galaxy was learning that being able to use a tool was very different from being able to maintain it. And the worst was yet to come. 5 years after the humans had vanished, the galaxy was falling apart. Kix quote, Mara stood in her empty warehouse on the trade station of Prosperity Hub. Once, this building had been filled with goods from 100 worlds. Automated systems had sorted, packaged, and shipped millions of tons of cargo every month. Now the machines were silent and covered in dust. She touched a control panel that had once responded instantly to her commands. Nothing happened. The system had crashed 3 weeks ago and none of her technicians could bring it back online. Ma'am, the shipping schedules are completely broken, her assistant Nexara reported. Half the cargo ships are lost in hyperspace, and the other half are afraid to leave port. Kix Mara nodded slowly. Her trading empire, built over 50 years of careful work, was collapsing. She had been the richest individual in 3 sectors. Now she was watching her fortune disappear one failed shipment at a time. The problem wasn't just her business. Every major trading company was suffering the same fate. The complex network of supply chains that humans had designed and maintained was breaking down everywhere at once. On the planet Korvar, millions of people were facing starvation. Their world specialized in manufacturing and had always imported food from agricultural systems, but the food shipments had stopped coming as the transportation network failed. Governor Rixel looked out at riots in the streets below his office. His people were hungry and scared, and he had no solutions to offer them. Sir, we've received another message from the farming worlds, his aide informed him. They have plenty of food, but they can't get it to us. The shipping routes are too unreliable. Rixel had seen this problem coming for months. When humans ran the logistics network, food moved between worlds as naturally as rivers flowed downhill. Complex calculations were made in real time to adjust for weather, demand, and transportation costs. Backup plans existed for every possible disruption. Now those same routes were a maze of confusion. Ships couldn't find each other in hyperspace. Cargo manifests were lost or corrupted. Delivery schedules meant nothing when half the vessels never reached their destinations. In the Vorthak Military Command Center, War Chief Belgoth faced his own nightmare. The most powerful military force in the galaxy was becoming helpless as their weapons failed one by one. Report, Belgoth demanded. Power cores in the 7th Fleet are down to 30% capacity, his chief engineer replied. The 9th Fleet has lost weapons entirely. The 12th Fleet is stranded in the Outer Rim with no propulsion power. Belgoth slammed his fist on the command table. The Vorthak had conquered dozens of worlds with those ships. They had been the ultimate expression of military might. Now they were floating junk. What about the human manuals, the technical specifications? We've studied them for years, sir. The theory is all there, but building new power cores requires manufacturing techniques that we never learned. The humans made it look simple, but their methods involved thousands of tiny details that they never bothered to document. That was the cruelest irony. Humans had left behind complete records of everything they had built. But their documentation described what they did, not how they thought. The intuitive leaps, the creative problem-solving, the ability to see simple solutions to complex problems. These things couldn't be written down in a manual. On Research Station Alpha 7, Dr. Pixwell was struggling with equations that Dr. Bora had left behind. The human scientist had been working on a breakthrough in faster-than-light travel that could have revolutionized space exploration. The mathematics were elegant and beautiful. Every calculation was perfect. The theoretical framework was complete. But Dr. Pixwell couldn't understand the leap of insight that had made the whole thing possible. How did she know to try this approach, he muttered, staring at screens full of data. How did she see the connection between quantum field fluctuations and hyperspace geometry? His research team had spent 2 years trying to continue Bora's work. They had some of the smartest minds in the galaxy, but they couldn't replicate the creative thinking that had made humans so valuable. It was like trying to paint a masterpiece by following a step-by-step guide. All the techniques were explained, but the vision that made it art was missing. The same pattern was repeating across the galaxy. Human achievements were everywhere, but the ability to improve or even maintain them was gone. In the medical centers, doctors worked with equipment they couldn't repair. In the factories, workers operated machines they didn't understand. In the communication networks, technicians followed procedures they couldn't modify. Everything was slowly grinding to a halt. The Council of Worlds met in emergency session every week now. The Great Chamber, once filled with confident delegates from prosperous civilizations, was becoming a gathering of desperate leaders sharing bad news. The Altarian sector has declared a state of emergency, Councillor Velthar reported. Medical supplies are running out and they can't manufacture more without human expertise. The Corvin worlds are requesting immediate food aid, added another delegate. Their supply chains have completely collapsed. The Zilrani Trade Federation is bankrupt, announced a third. Their shipping network is gone. Council leader Mordak looked around the room. Every face showed the same expression of fear and confusion. These were the leaders of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, and they were helpless. What about military intervention? Suggested War Chief Belgoth. We could force the humans to return and fix these problems. The room fell silent. Everyone knew that the Vorthak military was in no condition to threaten anyone. Besides, no one knew where the humans had gone. Even if we found them, Councillor Silvana said quietly, do you really think they would help us after the way we treated them? That question hung in the air like a poison cloud. Everyone remembered the votes where human proposals had been rejected. Everyone remembered the speeches where human contributions had been called adequate or sufficient. Everyone remembered treating humans like useful servants rather than equal partners. Dr. Yelmar, now the head of the failing medical network, stood to address the council. I worked alongside Dr. So Young for 10 years, he said. She was brilliant, dedicated, and kind. She saved millions of lives and asked for nothing but professional respect. We gave her criticism instead. He paused, looking around the room. The last thing she said to me was that we had the knowledge and tools to handle medical emergencies ourselves. She was wrong. We had the tools, but we never learned to use them the way she did. She didn't just treat diseases. She understood them. She didn't just follow procedures, she created new ones when the old ones weren't enough. More silence. The humans weren't just doing jobs, Dr. Yelmar continued. They were thinking about problems in ways that never occurred to the rest of us. That's what we lost. Not their hands, but their minds. Elder Mordak finally spoke. Then we must learn to think the way they did. With respect, sir, Dr. Yelmar replied. That might take centuries, and we have months before complete collapse. The truth was worse than anyone wanted to admit. The galaxy had become completely dependent on human competence without even realizing it. Like a body that had forgotten how to breathe, galactic civilization was suffocating on its own helplessness. 1,500 different species, billions of brilliant minds, uncountable resources and achievements. All of it grinding to a halt, because one species had quietly walked away. The humans hadn't destroyed anything. They had simply stopped fixing the things that broke every day in a complex civilization. But in a universe where entropy was constantly at work, not fixing things was the same as destroying them. The galaxy was learning that maintenance was not glamorous work, but it was essential work. And they were learning it too late. 7 years had passed since the humans left. The Galactic Council chambers, once a symbol of unity and prosperity, now looked like a relic from a dead civilization. Half the seats were empty because their governments had collapsed. The remaining delegates looked tired and defeated. Elder Mordak, now the last surviving member of the original council, called the emergency session to order. His voice echoed in the nearly empty chamber. We gather today to face the truth we have avoided for too long, he began. Our civilization is dying, and we must understand why. The holographic displays around the chamber showed the grim statistics. Over 300 worlds had gone dark, their populations either dead or scattered. The hyperspace communication network was operating at less than 10% capacity. Trade between systems had dropped by 90%. Medical care had returned to pre-space age levels on most worlds. Councillor Yepthara, one of the few remaining Altarian delegates, stood to speak. We have analyzed the failures across all sectors. The pattern is consistent everywhere. Human-designed systems worked perfectly for decades. then failed catastrophically when maintenance was required. She activated a display showing the timeline of breakdowns. Medical equipment, transportation networks, communication systems, power, generation, agricultural management, manufacturing processes, everything began failing at approximately the same rate. War Chief Belgoth, whose once mighty military was now reduced to a handful of functional ships, leaned forward. "You're saying this was planned? That the humans sabotaged their own work?" "No," replied Dr. Yelmar, now serving as the medical advisor to what remained of the council. "The opposite. These systems were designed to last forever, but only with proper maintenance. The humans built them to need the kind of intuitive care that only they knew how to provide." He pulled up technical documentation from a human medical facility. "Look at this diagnostic system. The manual explains every procedure, every calibration, every component. But it doesn't explain how to troubleshoot problems that aren't in the manual. It doesn't teach you how to recognize patterns in data that indicate a developing problem. It doesn't show you how to modify procedures when dealing with new situations." The room was silent as the implications sank in. "Humans didn't just maintain equipment," Dr. Yelmar continued. "They improved it constantly. Every day they made small adjustments based on experience and intuition. They prevented problems before they occurred. They adapted solutions to changing conditions. They innovated in ways that kept everything running smoothly." Kixmara, once the richest trader in the galaxy, and now struggling to feed her own family, spoke next. "We thought they were just following procedures. We never realized they were creating the procedures as they went." She activated another display showing the complexity of the galactic supply chain. "This isn't just about technical knowledge. Humans had a gift for seeing connections that others missed. They understood how changing the shipping route for grain from Kepler Prime would affect metal prices on Vorthak stations 3 months later. The display showed thousands of interconnected relationships between worlds, resources, and needs. The network looked like a living organism, with humans acting as its nervous system. Without them, we've been making random decisions that create chaos throughout the entire system," Kixmar admitted. "We've been treating symptoms instead of understanding causes." Elder Sylvana, the oldest being in the chamber, slowly rose from her seat. Her voice carried the weight of centuries. "I have served on this council for longer than any of you," she said. "I remember when humans first joined us. They were eager to help, excited to contribute. They offered solutions to problems we didn't even know we had." She looked around at the empty seats where prosperous civilizations once sent their representatives. "Do you know what we called them in the early years? We called them the useful ones. Not because they were more intelligent than us, but because they could make anything work. They had a talent for turning ideas into reality." Her words hung in the air like an accusation, but we never valued that talent. We took credit for their innovations. We dismissed their warnings. We treated them like servants who happened to be good at fixing things. The display changed to show voting records from council sessions over the past century. In proposal after proposal, humans had suggested improvements, predicted problems, and offered solutions. In vote after vote, their ideas had been rejected or ignored. The Agricultural Improvement Project, rejected because it was too expensive. Sylvana read from the records. 6 years later, we faced famine across 12 systems and begged them to implement the same project as an emergency measure. The Hyperspace Safety Protocol, dismissed as unnecessary bureaucracy. 4 years later, we lost 300 ships in hyperspace accidents and rushed to adopt their exact recommendations. The Medical Research Initiative voted down because other species wanted to control their own healthcare. 2 years later, we were dealing with plague outbreaks and desperately needed their expertise. The pattern was clear and shameful. Time after time, humans had seen problems coming and offered solutions. Time after time, the council had ignored them until crisis forced acceptance of their ideas. They never complained, Sylvana continued. They just quietly implemented their solutions anyway, often without taking credit. They prevented wars by solving the resource disputes that caused them. They prevented famines by improving agricultural systems before crops failed. They prevented plagues by developing treatments before diseases spread. She paused and looked directly at each remaining delegate. We never thanked them. We never acknowledged their contributions. We just assumed they would always be there to clean up our mistakes. Dr. Pixwall, the researcher who had spent years trying to understand Dr. Bora's work, spoke up. I've been analyzing human scientific achievements. In 4 centuries of cooperation, humans contributed to 92% of all major technological breakthroughs, not as assistants or junior partners, but as the primary innovators. The number was staggering. Almost every advancement that had improved galactic civilization could be traced back to human minds. Faster-than-light communication, quantum computing, biological regeneration, sustainable energy, weather control, artificial gravity, all human innovations that we've been taking for granted, Dr. Pixwall explained. They shared their knowledge freely and asked only to be treated as equals. War Chief Belgoth, whose warrior culture valued strength above all else, spoke quietly. I called them weak because they preferred negotiation to conquest. I thought they were cowards because they avoided fights they could have won. He looked at his hands, remembering the human engineers who had built his weapons and the human doctors who had treated his soldiers. I was wrong. They were strong enough to build instead of destroy. They were brave enough to help their enemies. They were wise enough to prevent wars instead of winning them. The chamber fell silent again. Each delegate was remembering their own interactions with humans, their own dismissive comments and ungrateful attitudes. Council Leader Mordak finally asked the question that everyone was thinking. Can we contact them? Can we negotiate their return? Elder Sylvana shook her head slowly. We sent expeditions to every known human colony and outpost, all empty. They covered their tracks professionally and completely. It's as if they vanished from the universe. But surely they would help us if they understood how desperate our situation has become, suggested Counselor Yepthara. Would you? Sylvana asked. If you had spent 4 centuries being taken for granted, would you return to save the people, who never appreciated your sacrifice? The question had no good answer. Dr. Yelmar activated one final display. It showed a message that had been discovered in the deepest archives of the medical database, encrypted and hidden where only desperate searching would find it. We found this yesterday, he said. It was left by Dr. So Young, but I believe it speaks for all of them. The message was simple and heartbreaking. We are not leaving because we hate you. We are leaving because we are tired of being invisible. For 400 years we have given you our best, and you have treated it as your due. We have solved your problems, and you have taken credit for the solutions. We have prevented your disasters, and you have never noticed they were coming. We do not expect gratitude, but we had hoped for respect. We do not need praise, but we had wanted recognition. We do not require reward, but we had deserved partnership. You will learn to do for yourselves what we have been doing for you. You will struggle, and many will suffer, and some will not survive. This breaks our hearts, but we cannot sacrifice our dignity to prevent your pain. We are going to find a place where we can build something new, something where contributions are valued, where problems are solved before they become catastrophes, where intelligence is respected regardless of its source. You are welcome to join us when you learn to see us as we truly are. The message ended, with coordinates, not to where humans had gone, but to where they had come from. Earth. Empty now for 7 years. The chamber was silent except for the sound of civilization's ending. The reckoning was complete. They finally understood what they had lost and why they could never get it back. 10 years had passed since the humans walked away. The Galactic Council chambers were almost empty now. Only 12 species remained functional enough to send representatives, and they met in a small conference room instead of the grand hall that once hosted hundreds of delegates from across the galaxy. Elder Sylvana, now the senior council member, looked around at the handful of survivors. They represented the last remnants of what had once been the greatest civilization in galactic history. The search teams have returned, she announced. All of them. For 3 years, the remaining governments had pooled their failing resources to mount expeditions across the galaxy. desperately seeking any trace of where the humans had gone. Every known star system, every unexplored region, every possible hiding place had been searched. Dr. Yelmar, whose medical knowledge had kept several worlds from complete collapse, spoke first. Any signs of human presence? None, Silvana replied. They have vanished as completely as if they never existed. Our best estimates suggest they traveled beyond the galactic rim, perhaps to another galaxy entirely. The news was not surprising, but it was still devastating. The last hope of bringing back the humans, of somehow convincing them to save what remained of galactic civilization, was gone. Counselor Yepthera activated a holographic display showing the current state of the galaxy. Where once there had been thousands of thriving worlds connected by streams of trade and communication, now there were scattered islands of struggling survivors. Population analysis, she reported in a tired voice. 1,200 worlds are completely uninhabited. 400 more are down to subsistence-level populations. Only 87 systems maintain any form of advanced technology. The numbers told the story of collapse. From 1,500 species at the height of galactic civilization, fewer than 200 remained viable. Billions had died from starvation, disease, and the breakdown of the systems that had sustained them. War-Chief Belgoth, now commanding the last dozen functional Vorthak ships, looked older than his years. My people have become farmers, he said with grim irony. The greatest military force in the galaxy is growing vegetables to survive. It was the same everywhere. Proud civilizations had been reduced to basic survival. The Zilrani, once masters of interstellar commerce, were learning to make tools by hand. The Alterians, whose medical knowledge had been legendary, were treating diseases with herbs and primitive remedies. There is something else, Elder Silvana said quietly. Something we discovered in the deepest archives of the central database. She activated a new display, showing a message that bore the official seal of the human government. The timestamp showed it had been recorded just hours before Ambassador Hyunwoo's final speech to the Council. This was hidden in the quantum encryption layer of the communication network, Silvana explained. It was meant to be found only after our civilization had time to reflect on its choices. The message began with the face of President Yunji, the last human leader to address galactic civilization. She looked tired but determined, speaking directly to the camera with the same calm dignity that had marked humanity's departure. If you are viewing this message, then our predictions have proven accurate. Your civilization has collapsed, and you are searching for answers that we can no longer provide in person. Her words carried no anger or satisfaction, only sadness. We want you to understand that this was not revenge. We did not leave to punish you or to watch you suffer. We left because we could no longer live as invisible servants in a house we had helped build. The camera pulled back to show President Yunji standing in what appeared to be a vast library filled with the accumulated knowledge of human civilization. We spent 4 centuries trying to earn your respect through service. We solved your problems, prevented your wars, cured your diseases, and built your future. In return, we received tolerance at best and dismissal at worst. She walked between shelves, lined with data crystals and hard copy books. We realized that you would never see us as equals as long as you needed us as servants, so we removed ourselves from the equation, hoping you would learn to value what you had taken for granted. The president stopped at a display showing the WoW galaxy as it had been. Vibrant, connected, thriving. We know that our departure would cause suffering. We know that billions would die as the systems we maintained collapsed. This knowledge breaks our hearts, but we could not sacrifice our dignity to prevent consequences you had chosen through your actions. Her voice remained steady, but tears were visible in her eyes. We left you everything we could. Every manual, every procedure, every piece of knowledge that could be written down or recorded. We trained your people in every skill they were willing to learn. We documented every process we could think of. The display changed to show the empty human settlements the search teams had discovered, but we could not leave you the one thing that made it all work. The willingness to care about problems that were not our own, to see connections others missed, to take responsibility for solutions even when we received no credit. President Yoonji looked directly into the camera with an expression of infinite sadness. You wanted our labor without our partnership. You wanted our knowledge without our wisdom. You wanted our solutions without our voices. We gave you all of these things for 4 centuries, hoping you would eventually see us as we truly were. The message paused as she gathered her thoughts. We are not gods. We are not uniquely gifted. We are simply a species that learned to solve problems by working together, to prevent disasters by planning ahead, and to build things that last by caring about the people who will use them. She gestured to the library around her. These skills can be learned. These attitudes can be developed. But they require humility, cooperation, and the willingness to value maintenance as much as creation. The president walked to a window showing ships preparing for departure. We are leaving to find a place where we can build something better. A civilization based on mutual respect, where every species contributes according to their abilities and receives recognition for their efforts. She turned back to the camera one final time. You are welcome to join us, but only when you have learned to see beyond your own immediate needs. Only when you understand that true strength comes from lifting others up, not from standing on their shoulders. The message showed coordinates not in galactic space but indicating a direction toward the neighboring Andromeda galaxy. If you can build a society based on cooperation rather than hierarchy, on gratitude rather than entitlement, on wisdom rather than just intelligence, then send a signal to these coordinates. We will be listening. President Yoonji's final words were barely a whisper. We hope someday to welcome you as equals. Until then, learn to be worthy of the partnership we always offered, and you never accepted. The message ended, leaving the council chamber in absolute silence. Elder Sylvana looked around at the remaining delegates. These few represented all that survived of a civilization that had once spanned the galaxy. They were the inheritors of humanity's legacy, the knowledge, the technology, and the responsibility to use both wisely. The message is clear, she said finally. We have been given a choice. We can continue to decline until nothing remains, or we can learn to become the people the humans thought we could be. Dr. Yelmar stood slowly. I propose we begin by acknowledging what we lost. Not just the technology or the expertise, but the character traits that made humans so valuable. Their humility, their cooperation, their willingness to serve without demanding recognition. War Chief Belgoth nodded. My people must learn that true strength lies in protecting the weak, not in conquering them. Kixmara, representing the few, surviving traders, added, we must learn that prosperity means everyone has enough, not that some have everything. One by one, the remaining delegates made similar commitments. To value maintenance as much as innovation, to prevent problems instead of just solving them, to work together instead of competing constantly. Elder Sylvana activated the communications array, pointing it toward the Andromeda galaxy. It will be generations before we are ready to send that signal, she said, but we can begin the work of becoming worthy of it. The galaxy belonged to them now. Empty and broken, but full of possibility. They had the knowledge the humans had, left behind, and they had learned the painful lesson of what happened when wisdom was ignored. Whether they could rebuild something better remained to be seen. But for the first time in 10 years, there was hope that they might learn from their mistakes instead of repeating them. The humans had walked away in absolute quiet, leaving behind only the echo of what could have been. The survivors would spend the rest of their lives trying to become worthy of that gift.